Hi guys, welcome to Comics and Chill. Today we're looking at Wolverine SNIKT issue 1. This is from 2003, from a line that Marvel were putting out at the time to try and get on top of the manga craze that was hitting the Western comics market at the time with all the translated editions and so on. And this line was called Tsunami, which I think is a poor choice to name an attempt at a manga line, but there you go. I think C.B. Cebulski was kind of spearheading it, and to be honest with you, at the time when these comics were coming out, I had no idea that they were connected. And in researching this issue and other issues that I want to do videos on in the future, I realized that I'd actually collected quite a lot of these comics. There was a Human Torch by Scotty Young. There was a Nemo series, which I had a couple of issues of. There was a Venom series by Daniel Way and Francisco Herrera. The Runaways launched out of this by Brian K. Vaughan. Vaughan also did a Mystique series. The SNIKT was part of it, and I think there was a New Mutants and a series called Sentinel. And I had an issue of every one of those things, at least one, except for the Mystique series, which I'm actually quite interested in going back to read. But I will do another video on the Tsunami line later on down the road. But today we're looking at SNIKT, and this was written and drawn by Nihei Tsutomu, who is a prominent manga artist or mangaka in Japan. He's had series such as Blam, Biomega, and Knights of Sidonia are his biggest ones. But between Blam and Biomega, he did this Wolverine series, SNIKT. I'm not sure who approached who, but my assumption would be that Marvel or CB himself would approach Tsutomu to try and bring him in to legitimize the line, the Tsunami line. And this was a 5-issue miniseries. It ran to completion. The Tsunami line itself started in 2003 in January and was actually discontinued by the end of 2003. A little about Nihei Tsutomu. He started off studying architecture, and he worked in construction for a little while. Eventually dropped that to study to become a manga artist. I believe he went to school in New York for a little while, and he has a lot of influences outside of the Japanese comic industry. He likes a lot of French comics, American comics, American sci-fi films, so on and so forth. And when you read about his influences, you can really see it in his work. So one of the first things I'll say about this is I absolutely love the cover design throughout the miniseries. It's just a picture of Wolverine against a solid coloured background, and it's just really bold and it stands out. When I would go to the comic shop when I was younger, sometimes my older brother would come with me, and he was studying graphic design at the time. He was semi-interested in comics, he'd read what I give him sometimes, but he wasn't hardcore. And he would always gravitate to the covers on the shelf that kind of looked like this, or maybe today an example would be some of the design work that Jonathan Hickman implements into his covers, kind of sparse, simple, but bold, and it can really stand out on a shelf. If every comic cover has a lot going on, if it's very busy, if it's a big epic fight scene, there's a lot of colors going on, so on and so forth, something like this SNIKT cover will jump out at you, and I think that's a plus. It's something to keep in mind if you're creating your own comic. So let's dig in. So we start off looking at Wolverine in a sparse landscape, close up on his claws, and then we lead right into a nice double page spread, seeing him facing down this army of skull-headed demons. We're not quite sure what they are at this point, but you can see in the credits, Tsutomu Nihei handled everything in this storytelling, script if there was one. I mean, from the interviews I've seen with him, he tends to be, I guess he has a germ of an idea, and then he's kind of stream of conscious figuring that out in his layouts. He draws a quick rough version of it, and in one interview in particular he says unless he's drawing the next panel, he does not know what's going to happen next in the story. And reading this, I kind of think Marvel might have let him go with that approach. I mean, it would kind of be an insult to bring him over and then to completely ask him to work in a complete different way to what he's, what would be the point of bringing him on board. So more shots of him staring down these creatures who we're not sure what they are yet. And then we get a flashback back to earlier New York City. I'm not a fan of the coloring on this page. The colors are credited to Guru FX. I'm not sure if that's a studio with a bunch of people or one person working under a studio name, but I think the color choices here are a bit too garish for the art style. But thankfully that only sticks around for these flashback scenes. We see a young girl. She's waiting for Logan. He's not waiting for her, he's not expecting her, but she's asking him to come to her world to help save her people who are being killed. He's confused, hesitant. They shake hands, and this activates a device which takes Logan to her world. But midway through the transportation, they lose grip and Logan is lost. And she returns to her resistance fighters alone, and they're pretty pissed about why she doesn't have Logan with them. And we cut to this nice sparse looking page here. There's a lot of, manga paced storytelling, action to action, not a ton of dialogue. And you can see here in this page, which I love, that Tsutomu's architectural background is really paying off for him. Anyway, Wolverine finds himself in this strange world. It's kind of post-apocalyptic, very deserty. He eventually ends up facing down this monster, and Wolverine swiftly finishes the job. However, this thing has the ability to stitch itself back together, and that's where the story ends. So my memory of purchasing this comic was that I would see them on the shelves at my store, and eventually, I think I only saw the first 3 issues, and eventually they bundled them all into one poly bag and they were selling them off cheap. I think I picked up the first 3 issues for £1, £1.50, something like that. And I was just happy to get some new comics. And it wasn't really like anything I was reading at the time, but I was really enjoying it. I'm not sure how aware I was that this was a Japanese artist at that age, coming from a strong manga background. But yeah, I really dug the series. I'm definitely going to reread it, and I'm going to review all the issues. And I'm also going to be looking more into Nihei Tsutomu's work, more of his books that I haven't read, like Blam looks amazing. I've seen it on bookshelves here. I remember coming across Biomega briefly when I was younger. And also, he drew a chapter of the Halo graphic novel from 2007, which I'm hoping to take a look at too. I picked this up on Comixology, and if you see it in a sale or if you fancy tracking it down, it's definitely worth the read. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Thanks to the new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Like this video, and you can follow us on social media. Have a great day.